Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Art Clinic Online. Where we're here today with Dr. Schroeder Cherry, but to introduce our incredible sculptor and mixed media artist, amongst other things, we have another Art Clinic Online contributor who's was one of our first presenters for the Art Clinic Online. So we don't get to see his lovely face today because he is, of course, being the amazing father that he is, and as a swim meet parking lot. But I will introduce our incredible mixed media artist, drawer of ceramics, gallery director, DC artist promoter extraordinaire, the amazing Lenny Campello, who will introduce our artist today. Welcome, Lenny.
Thank you, Jordan. That was probably the second or third best introduction ever for me. I appreciate that. That was a joke. Hopefully, everybody can hear me well. And my apologies if my voice occasionally sounds like I'm underwater. Like Jordan said, I'm in the middle of Silver Spring, somewhere near where the Glenwood Tigers are meeting our team from Tally Ho. And my son is swimming out there as he does every weekend. Haha. And I don't mean that as a joke. But let's get back to the subject. I first came across Dr. Schroeder Cherry's work almost 10 years ago now. Funny how time slips away. And Schroeder, I don't know if you remember, it was at the 2016 Artomatic in Potomac,
Oh
which
yeah,
was
yes, I
that's
do
right.
remember. Yeah.
Yes, and at the time we spent quite a bit of time talking. I was really attracted to his work, in the sense that to this day I don't really recall anybody else. This is kind of a real big compliment to give any artist, considering the fact I do a lot of art fairs where I see thousands and thousands and thousands of artists from all over the world, and Schroeder seems to have carved for himself, no pun intended, a pretty special niche in his work. When you first glanced at it, as I did, you kind of go to it and you think, "Oh wow, look at this amazing naive art," and it's as farthest from that as ever. Because once you get into it and you realize what Schroeder's doing, then you
Yeah,
discover.
Lenny, I do believe your first comment to me was, "Oh, so you're a self-taught artist, right?"
Yes, that's right. I actually wrote that up. And when I wrote the review of Artomatic, I started by saying exactly that. And then as we got to talk and I started really looking closely at the work and talking to you, I discovered by far that not only that is as far away from the truth, but that you are not just any old artist. You're kind of like super trained in a variety of different things, and thus while you extend your powerful artistic muscles in all kinds of different directions, including puppetry, which is something that you do pretty much all over, and which brings you, in my opinion, anyway, since I kind of come across that side of your life quite often, almost as much attention, if not more, sometimes than your fine arts. Um, but discussing his fine arts, his work is kind of the kind of work that once you look at it in depth and once you examine all the precision and the intelligence that takes to assemble it, and I choose that word carefully, assemble, you can see that Dr. Schroeder's work is the kind of work that deserves the attention that it gets and the kind of work that deserves the collection basis that it gets. But I think the thing I want to underline to every single artist that's listening to this is that doesn't come easy. That also comes with a guy, an artist with an amazing work ethic that doesn't just sit in his studio or at home waiting for people to knock on his door. Um, I get pretty much because of the fact that I've been around for such a long time and I kind of do all kinds of different things, all kinds of news releases from all over the place, right? And I can guarantee you that I can name 4 or 5 artists that I think are probably the hardest working artists that I know by the amount of exposure that they get, and it doesn't come to them for nothing. It comes to them because they bust their ass beating the bushes and approaching places and trying to get shows. And I think that work ethic is something that every single one of us can learn from. And when that work ethic comes with spectacular work that has a really, really important footprint, then it's a formula for success. Um, I have a 15-year-old boy who, at this age, I remember when I was 15, was kind of the same way. Is somewhat thinking about stuff such as, am I going to be remembered for this or for that? And I always bring up to him the fact that artists have kind of a key to that, especially if you're a really, really, really good artist like Dr. Cherry is. Such as the fact that when you think about this, imagine the fact, let's say that in his lifetime, he's produced 500, 600, I don't know, works of art. The fact that long after he is gone, his presence will remain through those pieces of art, I think, is what an artistic footprint, a footprint period, is all about. And I can almost guarantee you, because of the depth and breadth of his work, that 3, 4, 500 years from now, there's still going to be a lot of Schroeder cherries laying around, not laying around, but hanging on people's walls. And some of them will be as antiques, because they will all become antiques, but some of them will be in museums, some of them will be in collections, and many, many, many of them will be in the loving descendants of the people that originally acquired from them. Sotheby's has done this study in which they discovered that when the elders in the family die, and the family gets rid of their stuff, the one thing that they seem to always keep, because it's almost like it runs genetically in the thread of the family, is the artwork. So, Dr. Cherry, I can guarantee you that in a few hundred years from now, if not thousand, there's still going to be a lot of your work around, and we're all in the better for that. So every time that somebody gives me a microphone, somebody has to remind me that I am of Cuban ancestry. So I could be talking here for the next 3 hours. I'm not Jordan, don't worry. All of you, I would like to introduce a really, really good artist and a very hardworking artist, Dr. Schroeder Cherry.
Thank you, Lenny. That must be the most third or fourth best introduction I've ever had.
Well played.
Yeah, if I don't end up in museums 200 years from now, I'm going to come looking for you. So thank you for that. First of all, thank you for having me here. And Jordan, I think the work that you're doing is really important, because as a museum person, I rely heavily on documentation when I'm trying to learn about other artists. So the fact that you're interviewing artists and documenting them is very important for the field. So thank you for having me on this. As Lenny mentioned, I'm a visual artist. I'm also a puppeteer, and I'm a museum professional. So my artistic career has taken place in those three areas, and those have been operating throughout. Today, what I'd like to talk to you about is the artwork and a little bit about the puppets. And with my artwork, I tend to work in series, because working in series allows me to go deep with an idea and just to explore how to visualize a particular narrative of a story. Most of my pieces are what I call open-ended narratives, which means that there is a story behind or a narrative that drove me to produce the piece, but I don't expect the viewer to come up with the exact same story. In fact, many times I like to eavesdrop in a gallery and try to hear the conversations before they understand that I'm the artist, because that way I can get the unfiltered response to pieces. And sometimes what people come up with was way far more deep or richer than I had in mind. And I'm not too shy about stealing an idea and saying that's a good idea for the next piece. The first series I'm sharing with you is from the Future Voter series. And this series was inspired by the politics that were going on with the election in 2020. This is an ongoing series because I'm still concerned about young people and their exposure to the political environment. And many times they may not understand what's going on at the moment, but they will, when they become of voting age, think back on things that happened, such as children in Texas using Winnie the Pooh to learn how to resist mass shootings. And the education department chose Winnie the Pooh because Winnie the Pooh uses words that FBI uses, such as fight, resist, hide, stay, run. They're using these same words to help children deal with mass shooting. So that's the kind of craziness that kids are being exposed to now. So these pieces are all about young people in various environments and the commonality is future voter. You will see throughout my work recurring images. I use keys, I use locks, I use objects. Keys for me represent tools of access, whether it's material or non-material. I think we're all trying to access something. So those have become part of the vocabulary. And I'm also intrigued by the power of keys, because everybody I know has got at least one key. They've had it for more than a year and they don't know what it belongs to, but they don't want to give it up. So what is it about the power of keys? And now people are actually giving me keys. Even strangers are contacting me on Facebook and saying, what's your mailing address? I got a box of keys for you. So I've gotten keys from Chicago, from a former colleague who is now in Delaware, New Orleans, California, different places. And I'm putting them all to good use. Sometimes I sew them into the wood. Sometimes they're just embedded into the wood. These are all from the Future Voter series. And I'm not going to try to interpret these as I go through. I'd just like you to have a chance to look at them. And if you have any questions later, just let me know. This piece is actually on view right now at the Baltimore-Washington International Airport, Thurgood Marshall, in the Yumi Hogan International Gallery, which is at the way far end of checkpoint D and E. It's an exhibit that was curated by Martina Dodd, who is at the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum in Annapolis, and that'll be up until September. This is another piece from the Future Voter series. This one actually highlights teenagers who are not quite old enough to vote, but they can read and know what's going on in the political environment. You will also see in the series images that here. This is sign language. And this was inspired by my childhood experience. I was in daycare as a child with a deaf boy. And as I think back on that, I realized we played together, but what did we do? Because Billy couldn't hear. And then I'm thinking about that, I realized that there are people in the deaf community around us now who are very visible, but you won't know that they are hearing impaired unless they reveal themselves. And that's an entirely different culture. This is called Splash Girl, Future Voter series. The cards that I use in the series, for me, have come to represent what do you deal with the cards of life that you're dealt. And depending on the game that you're playing, the cards would have a different value. This is called Test from the Future Voter series. This series is from the barbershop series. And this series actually started off on a dare. I was in the gym, I was shaving my head, and there's a very tall guy came behind me and said, "What do you know about shaving heads?" And I turned around thinking, like, I told him, I said, "I shave my head every other day. Who are you?" And he turns out to be a barber. He had his own shop. And I had been thinking about doing a barbershop series. So I asked him if I could come into his shop and make some images. He allowed me to do that. And that sparked the barbershop series. So I started going around to barbershops. After his shop, I started going around to barbershops in Maryland and in DC and just getting different images of barbers. What I learned was that there are some common things in barbershops. You'll always have the seat for the client. You'll have some seats for clients who are waiting to get their haircut. And of course, you've got mirrors on the wall and also handheld. And you've got the hair products. So those are things that are consistent. But beyond that, every barbershop is different. Everyone has their own culture, their own atmosphere. This particular shop happened to have a pool table in the back. So the guys were playing pool while they were waiting their turn, or while the barbers were waiting for their customers to come in and get their hair cut. Another feature that shows up in my series are the corner frames. And these, for me, have evolved to mean how you frame your life at different points. The way that you frame your life at different ages is different. So I'm thinking, as long as you're alive, your life is not completely framed one way or the other. So that's my little abstract approach to using the corner frames. Also, I have two friends in Baltimore who have stores, and they are gallerists, and they get these corner frames and they're samples, and they throw them out. They toss them. So I just thought these frames are just beautiful work. I'm trying to save them from the landfill. So thank you to Brian Truax and Terry Fleckenstein for these frames. Another piece from the Barber series. I started working on wood because initially I started painting on canvas, and I was abusing the canvas. I was cutting and burning and scraping and attaching things. And I got to the point where I realized I needed a stronger foundation. So that's when I moved over to wood. And this is just flat wood. I don't consider myself a sculptor per se. I still consider myself an assemblagist because the works are primarily two-dimensional. Also the Barber series. And I think I've got a shot of this particular guy in his own shop holding the painting. So sometimes I get a chance to have the pieces in the barber shop where where I found these guys. This series, it was inspired by a recent trip to Brazil. I was in Bahia, Salvador, and this was a trip that it was an artist grant travel award by the Maryland Arts Society of Baltimore. And I was there for about 2 weeks, just exploring the area. This particular piece represents a bon film because I landed just before New Year's Day, and every day there was a celebration going on. For the next 12 days, there was a celebration going on every single day. This is a boy in a park. I was watching the kids play soccer in a park. I was also really impressed with the water. The water just appeared with any vista. There was always the ocean, so you could always see the ocean from wherever you were. This is called pausa, pause. This is a night scene. I did a lot of walking at night, and I don't know what it was, but I was really emotional about this ocean at night. Big sky, big ocean at night. And this is poolside chat. I don't speak Portuguese, so there was a lot of translation I had to use. I used my translator on the phone so I could pick up conversations if I put my phone on translator. That was really helpful. This one is not from a series. This was actually inspired by an event that took place in Baltimore. It was the Baltimore Met Gala, which is basically a large fashion show. And the theme for that gala was Adam and Eve Enter the Garden. So this is the piece that I came up with. This is an interactive piece. The doors are closed here. You see the flora. And if you look in the center, this is the serpent. The serpent is here, right in the center. And the next slide is the same piece with the doors open. This is a pretty large piece. With the doors open, it's 89 inches wide. With the doors closed, it's 45 inches wide. And it's heavy because it is a solid wood piece. I am inspired by craftspeople from different cultures who work in wood. And I learn a lot from them. Japanese sculptors, Mexican sculptors, Nigerian and Ghanaian sculptors. I'm intrigued by all of their work and how they approach wood. About 10 years ago, I had a physical episode where I had an issue with my hips and I was not able to walk or bend or stoop or do my normal work, but I could sit and sketch. So I decided to start sketching portraits. And there was, during this time, there was also the COVID period where people were forced to wear masks. So I started doing what I call a mask on, mask off series. This is a sketch of a guy with a mask on, and this is the same guy with his mask off. I just kept doing these sketches, and they're basically pencil on paper. It's nothing fancy. I'm not using special graphite or charcoal. It's a #2 pencil or any pencil that I can find at the time. And they're in these sketchbooks that are hardbound, and there are about 100 pages in each book. I am now on book number 11. I ran out of family and friends, and now I go to strangers and say, hey, you got a great face. Can I do your portrait? So a lot of these people are folks that I really don't know personally, but I just wanted to do their face. If they allow me to do this sketch, basically what I do is take a photograph on the spot and I get their contact information, and then I work from home. And when I finish the piece, I give them a copy of the sketch so they can have it electronically. Sometimes I find a face that ends up in a painting later on, but that isn't really the purpose initially. I just want to get better at doing portraits and doing capturing faces. These are all 11 by 8. This is our mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott. He was casually dressed at an art event, and I thought, that's a great face. I want to capture that. So he let me take a shot. At an exhibition at Stevenson Gallery one summer, I handed 2 sketchbooks over to the students, and they chose 180 images and just reproduced them so we could put them on the wall. And this is what that wall looked like. Most of these pieces are from the Mask On, Mask Off series. So every sitter has the mask on and then with the mask off. I also work with smaller things, and this is from what I call the Kick-Ass Angel series. And these are angels that you go to when you're in the thick of it, and they're really successful. They're really effective in helping you because they've seen some things. So that's the backstory to those. These particular pieces are using Old Bay cans. And when I started, Old Bay was still using metal cans. Now they've stopped using metal cans. So whoever owns these pieces now, you got an antique, because the new cans are made out of plastic. So I switched over and had to figure out how to use the materials on plastic as opposed to metal. And I found out from one collector an advantage of the plastic. She said, well, when she put it in her space, she realized that there was light that shone through the plastic piece, and that didn't happen with the metal pieces. So I thought, okay, that's a good trade-off. I can deal with plastic now, and I'm also saving the plastic from the landfill. Each piece is different. I think I'm up to Angel Can 121, somewhere around there. It's a combination of wood, metal, found objects on the cans. And I'll use any can. It doesn't have to be Old Bay, but Old Bay is just what I started with. And I'm running into people. Everybody in this area has an Old Bay story. I ran into one guy. He says, I hate Old Bay. I hate Old Bay because my dad was in the military in Germany, and he would always have me ship boxes of Old Bay to him in Germany. I think his dad had a thing going on in Germany. These are angel sconces. So they grew out of the Angel Can series. Same background. These are angels who are from the Kick-Ass series, and they can help you through whatever's difficult. This particular one was influenced by the trip to Bahia, because I saw the Orishas in Bahia, those statues, and they always had their faces covered. So I started incorporating that idea with these next couple of pieces. This is also inspired by the Orishas. And now I'm experimenting. Of course, the wings and the head are made out of wood, but the body sometimes is made out of wood, sometimes it's made out of metal. I'm now scouring thrift shops for sconces and just getting really creative in how I can make that sconce into an angel piece. I have to say, I'm not trained as a woodworker. So when I needed to figure out something, I would hang out with guys in the lumber yard and say, how do you do this? And their first question is, so what are you working on? And they're thinking I'm working on a cabinet or a chair. But when I give them the design, they get really excited and say, well, you need this kind of drill, this kind of saw, start here, do this, 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 this. So I'm learning a lot by conversations with guys who work in wood. Another angel sconce. Now I'd like to talk about the puppetry. I was a kid who played with puppets when I was in second or third grade. My first puppets were hand puppets and then string puppets. And this is actually a string puppet that I had when I was in third grade. I believe it's Jed Clampett. He is in need of repair, but I hold on to him just because it reminds me of how I got started. My mother would give me puppets for my birthday and for Christmas as a child. This is a shot of a group of my puppets. I made all of these except for the one in the dead center. The dead center one is a Mamulao puppet from Brazil. And this puppet actually was given to me by a friend in New York who found it in a gift shop. I'm not a gift shop, a thrift shop in New York. And he thought, oh, Schroeder needs to have this. So I'm really glad he found this puppet made out of wood. My puppets are made out of a plastic wood and also fabric. So the heads and the hands are made out of a plastic wood. The bodies are soft sculpture, just like a doll. And they're what you call rod puppets. That for many of them, the eyes and the mouth open and close. I control them by the rods. So there's a center rod that goes through the body, from the neck and through the body. So I hold on to that rod. And the hands are controlled by two separate rods. These are three characters: DeAndre, here, Mr. Zeke, and Smooth Earl. Each of the characters has a backstory. One of the shows that we've been doing for a while is called The Children's Civil Rights Crusade. And this is a story about a young boy who has a very strict grandfather. He wants to know what his grandfather was like. He wondered what his grandfather was like as a child. He comes across an old newspaper from 1963 that says Negro children go to jail. And he looks at the photograph and he realized that one of those kids behind bars is his grandfather. So he says, oh, I need to find out what that's about. And he learns about how children in Birmingham, Alabama were very instrumental in protesting nonviolently for the civil rights movement, how they faced firemen with water hoses and attack dogs and policemen. So as he's telling the story, he's the narrator for the story, and as he's telling the story, he's also manipulating these other puppets. This is Maya Opinion, and she is the type of person who has an opinion about everything. So, and she also has a really large size martini glass. So whenever she makes a comment, she stops to take a sip. I just wanted to share this with you, if I can get this going.
I'm Cordell, and today we want to wish, hey Cordell! Yeah, Smooth Earl, we're making a video here. We're going to say Happy Father's Day, man, because it's Happy Father's Day this weekend. We need to say Happy Father's Day. That would be smooth. And where did Happy Father's Day come from anyway? Who started that? Well, some believe that Father's Day began in 1908 with Grace Golden Clayton of Fairmont, West Virginia. She campaigned for the date for children in a nearby town to remember their fathers. There had been an accident in a mine and 360 men died. Mother's Day started just a couple of months earlier, so that might have been her inspiration to start Father's Day. That's just my opinion. Well, we do know that Lyndon Johnson put the date on public record in 1966, and Richard Nixon, he declared Father's Day a holiday in 1972. Now, children in America, they usually give cards to their daddies, their granddaddies, and maybe even some of their godfathers. But in Germany, groups of men get together and they celebrate with beer and wine and meat on the back of a truck. That's how they celebrate over in Germany. Smooth. Well, we wish everybody a happy Father's Day. Especially you, Godfather Dempsey. Happy Father's Day.
So we started experimenting with Zoom during COVID when everybody was on lockdown. Puppeteers in the community started doing things on screen, and we learned a lot of things. I was working the camera with one hand and holding the puppet with the other, and just doing little snippets of things. This puppet is Miss Lily. She is a bona fide docent. I was working in the Baltimore Museum of Art as curator of education at that time, and I wanted to create a puppet who only dealt with adults. She didn't do children because I wanted to create a space in the galleries for adults to just play with imagination. So she has a Baltimore Museum docent ID card right here, and she conducts tours. She still does tours. This is actually from a tour that was done in the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Smithsonian, down in the mall. They wanted to highlight 6 objects that were recent acquisitions in the collection. And this piece is a shawl that was given to Harriet Tubman by Queen Victoria. So as we were walking through the gallery, she's conducting the tour. What I found is that people heard her voice before they saw her. So they would follow the tour. And when they finally saw that it was a puppet giving the tour, I heard some gasps. But we had a good time in the galleries. My recent involvement is with Crankies. Baltimore has a really rich puppetry community, and someone had been after me for doing a Cranky for like 3 years. And I said, I can't, I'm busy. And she finally said, so what are you doing next year? And I said, okay, the calendar's clear. Let me get on this Cranky thing. So the Cranky, for those of you that may not know, is actually a box, and the story is written on a scroll. And as you tell the story, you scroll through. So you have different images on the scroll. I'm using the scroll with illustration, and also I incorporated cutouts with my piece. This particular story is called Land of Primary Color. It's a place where everything is a primary color until one day there's an accident, and the people had to figure out what to do with these new colors. And that's my presentation.
Schroeder, are you creating the scripts as well as you're doing all the things, right?
Yes.
Does
Yes.
it ever do you ever run into writers or that just want to collaborate? They say, I have this amazing story. I need I need your expertise and how to present it. I mean, seems like a gold mine of just I don't
There's a
know.
lot of sharing that goes on in the puppetry community in Baltimore. So you have some exchange going on. There was one time where someone from Micah had an idea. She wanted to puppetize a poem, and I tried to talk her through it. I just couldn't work that particular thing out because I think there was a disconnection between her understanding a poem and what puppets need to do to present a narrative. So that didn't quite work out. But other times people will say, I've got an idea, and we just kind of kick the can until something comes up. This story, Land of Primary Color, was actually redeveloped from a larger show that I did where I was using 3-dimensional puppets, African puppets, as well as my own puppets to tell the same story. So when I went to translate it into a Cranky, I had to narrow it down to a 13-minute show because the original show is 45 minutes.
Wow.
And this
And
one is yeah, Crankies are shorter. So this is a compact 13-minute show.
It's fabulous. And when you're constructing your puppets, I imagine do you have a kind of a personality in mind that you're trying to recreate, or does it kind of happen as you're building or constructing the individual?
During COVID is the time I was producing puppets intensely, and that was the first time I was working like 5 puppets back to back. And that's not normally how I work because I don't produce puppets ongoing. Once you produce a puppet, you got that puppet, and then you work with it. So during COVID, I had characters in mind. Now, I have to say, sometimes the puppet tells you something different. I mean, when you start off with one idea and something else comes up. For example, Smooth Earl was supposed to be a different character. But as I was working on him, he evolved to be who he is. And then another puppet became the one I was thinking about initially. But I kind of go with the flow. So I don't, I have to go with the inspiration. Um, unless I'm developing something for a particular show, then I know the character I've got to stick with. That's got to be consistent. Otherwise, if I'm just kind of free flowing, I go with the inspiration as it happens. Yeah. But when we do shows, I also have the puppets audition for parts. So I play around with
What? Hold
yeah.
up, wait. How does that work?
Well, it's an audition. Baltimore has what you call puppet slams. So
Yeah.
a puppeteer has a show, and one of the things I often do at a slam is I'll do a song. I'll do a jazz blues song. So I may have two different characters audition for that song. And depending on how the character looks and how the puppet actually moves, it really affects the appearance of the song. So I've played around with that, and that's fun.
And you have like other puppeteers like kind of voting on like who gets the part.
No, this is an inside decision. This is an inside decision. Again, that goes to the open-ended narrative. It may have some import to the story as I'm putting it together, but I don't restrict the viewer to that particular narrative, so I open it up.
And sure, I had another question, kind of going back to your time in Brazil, when you're kind of constructing these assemblages of based on location and so forth. When you enter a new location, such as Brazil, are you kind of hunting for these found objects that you have kind of an idea, like for instance, you want to highlight the ocean, so you're looking for a certain object to kind of help with that, or does it just kind of fall into your lab and say, I'm going to save this for a project? How does your collecting of objects kind of work?
I went specifically to Bahia because it has the largest African diaspora population outside of Africa. And I went thinking it was going to be exotic. I'm going to see women dress differently, guys move differently. And what I found was these folks have been colonizing Western society for so long, it looks really much like what I'm used to. So it wasn't quite as exotic as I thought it was going to be. So going into the environment, I was wide open, but what I got was something very different. I can't say I was looking for anything in particular when I was there. So the ocean was something that just kind of impressed me because it was always there. And since I'm not living on the ocean here in Baltimore, I'm pretty impressed by walking on the ocean at night under a big sky. That really impresses me. So those types of things I was paying attention to. And also the architecture. I was looking at architecture that was from the colonial period, that they were really worn, beautifully aesthetically, but they were worn buildings right next to shiny blue skyscrapers that were narrow and very tall. And I wasn't used to seeing these what I will call skinny skyscrapers right next to very old architecture. So that contrast I was influenced by, and I would have to say I wasn't trying to interpret that directly so much as when I worked on the pieces, going for the feel of um, ruins next to something shiny and bright.
Does she have a question?
Yes, first of all, Mr. Cherry, you've restored my faith in humanity this morning. Your
Well, thank
creativity,
you.
your creativity and range of inspiration is just phenomenal. I have so many questions. First, I want to say that I adore Adam and Eve, that you made them African with African masks. I thought was fabulous, really incredible. So here, I'll give you all three of my questions, so I won't take up any more time. I'm curious, you used locks in several series and you used keys in others. So, and then my question is, with your puppets, who are just adorable, how do you move? At first I thought you move the mouth when you move the arm, but then I realized you also move the eyes and the mouth and the back. How do you do all that with two hands?
Okay, so here it is. I'm holding a rod with one hand, the eyes are connected to a thumb string and the mouth is connected to a finger string. So mouth, eyes, mouth, eyes, mouth,
Okay.
eyes.
Okay.
So that, yeah, that's the magic behind the mouth and eyes.
It's wonderful. It'd be so coordinated. And the locks and the keys.
The locks and the keys. The keys, as I mentioned, represent tools of access. You can either close something up or open it up. Locks are the same thing. You can close it or open it. One of the best eavesdropping conversations I had in the gallery was a couple who was looking at a piece, and the lock happened to be inside the figure's chest, and it was closed. And it disturbed the woman. She was just visibly disturbed by the thing. She didn't know that I was the artist. She said, I don't know why his lock has got to be closed, and it's in the heart. Why does it have to be closed? And the guy who was with her was so smooth. He said, well, all you need is the right combination. I thought that was rich.
Fantastic.
And I realized that people can be really really emotionally attached to how a key or a lock shows up in a piece.
Wow. It's interesting. And the playing cards, did they have special meeting for the subject that you can't share with us, or can you talk about how you chose the playing cards for?
It depends on now, again, the cards represent what do you do with the cards that you're dealt in life.
Yeah.
And depending on the card and depending on the game that you're playing, a card will have a different value. So that's the broader strokes piece to it. On the individual pieces, again, that's open to interpretation. If you got a Queen of Spades next to a Three of Hearts, what can you do with those cards depending on the game that you're playing? Or if it's an Uno card and you have a certain number and like some cards are flipped, some cards are like reverse, what do you do with that card in your deck?
Okay.
So it's a playful approach to the narrative.
Yes. Wonderful. Do you do aromatherapy? I think I started doing aromatherapy. I just told this to Jordan yesterday because one of my granddaughters, it helped her study all the way through school. And I've been doing it at night. And when I wake up in the morning is when I get sudden inspirations about how to solve problems or
Whoa.
so I found that.
I can't say I've used aromatherapy, but I do smell my food. I do smell my food, yeah.
How about the voices, Schroeder? Do you do the voices of the puppets, male, female, etc.?
Yeah, are you saying can I do them or do I?
Or
I do all of them.
Do you tend to, especially when they audition?
Yes. Well, when they're auditioning for a song, I don't have to worry about the voice because I'm going with the song. But
I see.
if it's a narrative, say Smooth Earl, hey Cordell, are we going to do this story about Black History Month? Because Black History Month is really important. And Cordell has a different character. It's like, Smooth Earl, I'm doing a video here. You interrupted the video.
You're amazing.
So yeah. So they all have a different character.
So you have to act and manipulate
with the voice. Yes.
God bless you.
When they're live, yeah.
Wow. I think
you have a question?
it could be used for therapy also. I think have you ever had that request that?
I have had that experience once, and I had a friend in New York who was a social worker, and he was working with emotionally disturbed kids, and I didn't quite know what I was walking into. And so I introduced the kids, and actually there was a lot of disruption in the very beginning because the kids were kind of raucous. They had never seen black puppets before, so they were kind of acting out. But once they calmed down, they were interacting with the puppets, and one of the puppet songs moved one of the kids, and we could tell that she was emotionally connected. The song was about losing someone in your family, and she simply said, I lost my mother. And I didn't know where to go with that. So I was really thankful for my friend who's a social person. And he's actually a psychologist. So he picked the ball up and kept it rolling. And then I realized if I were to do something like therapy, I'd need a background.
Sure. But the puppets are fantastic for that too, as well as so many other things. They're amazing.
But I'd also share another story to you. When Ms. Lilly gave a tour on Monet in the Baltimore Museum of Art, we had a group of adults who were following us in the galleries. And after the show, there were like, at the very beginning, there were 15 people who had signed up for the tour. But as we walked through the galleries, the group grew to about 30 adults. And after the show, this woman approached me. She was a white woman, very tall, corporately dressed, like a red suit, pearls, hair coiffed. She came up and she said, "I just want you to know I've been divorced for 12 years." And I thought, where is this going? And she said, "Today is the first time I have laughed in 12 years." And I thought, wow, that is powerful. That is really, really powerful. So I thought, yeah, we're doing the right thing.
What a joy to see you and see this range of your creativity and the interactivity for viewers with the art. And I have a couple things I need to say. One is has Miss Lilly retired? Or she's
No.
Okay.
No, she hasn't retired. She's on standby.
Okay. Well,
when she gets an invitation, she'll do a gig.
Well, Miss Lilly, it inspired my students. And you remember when I taught at MICA, you went on a project 30 years ago called Artful Adventures, where the students picked.
That was previous century.
Yeah, and we wrote an article. I still have it. And it just influenced so much. I did that project, continued on that project when you were gone for about 12 years. And then began, to do Artful Adventures in the DC museums when I taught at George Mason, and then creating this Summer Vision DC. So the interactivity with viewers brings them such meaning is so powerful. And I'm so happy to see your presentation and see the, it's integrity with humor. So thank you so much. And you've had a great influence on me and my work with museums. And how important it is for artists to connect. And yes, I've seen your cooking on Facebook as well.
I very much remember working with your students, because one of the big things we had to get across was the students who are training to work in a classroom.
Right.
And the distinction between working in a classroom and working in a museum gallery was, working in a gallery, you don't know who's going to show up, so you've got to be prepared.
Yeah. Once we got a grandma, and once we got a scout troop, we never knew. But the other thing is, what we did in that project was students selected one object and grouped them in different ways and gave a tour twice.
Yes.
And then they created instructional resources that they wrote about. Then they created art. And it was just so powerful. So
I remember having to talk to the guards, because one student had a really great program and she brought in her things in a shopping cart.
Got it.
And she was rolling the shopping cart through the galleries. I had to tell the guards, it's okay.
Well, great memories.
This is the learning experience. It's okay. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Renee. It's good to see you.
Great to see you.
Have you ever filmed Miss Lilly or another one? I know you showed us little video clips, but is there a video of a tour or something like that, or a video of a song when the puppets are auditioning? Have you ever videotaped it?
We videoed small snippets during COVID. We started doing on short things. So, and I would post them on Instagram and Facebook, so they appear. Lily actually has a couple of recordings of interviewing artists in a gallery. I'm a member of the Hamilton Art Gallery Collective here in Baltimore, and there was a time when I asked one of the guest artists who was exhibiting in the museum, in the gallery, I said, "Would you allow Miss Lilly to interview you and talk about your ceramics? Because I think your ceramics are really quite wonderful." And he said, "Oh yeah, sure." He didn't know that Lily was a puppet. So he was standing in front of his pieces, and I said, "Okay, are you ready now?" And he said, "Oh yeah." And this is a big guy. He's like a big bear kind of guy. And he turned around and started talking, and he saw the puppet, and he almost lost it. He just almost lost, but he kept it together. But you could tell he was just on the verge of just like breaking down. And he went home and said, I told my wife today that I was interviewed by a puppet. So
Fantastic.
yeah, we still have a couple of those interviews.
So they would be on
they're short. They're
Instagram?
like 60 seconds.
Okay, that's great. But would you let us know if Miss Lily or anybody else is doing a longer thing or a tour so we can either go or see it on
Sure.
video?
Sure. I record, well, I post everything on Facebook and Instagram, so that's one way of keeping in touch with what's going on with the puppets. And right now I saw an open call this morning for a show that's going to take place at the Peel Center in October. So we will apply for that, and if we are accepted, it's probably going to be a cranky, not a full puppet show, but it's probably going to be cranky. So if we are accepted for that, I will announce it to everybody.
Thank you. Amazing and inspiring. People are commenting in the chat, and I add my applause to, and amazing and inspiring.
Well, again,
Jordan, thank you. You mentioned we. Do you have a team for your performances? Like, how does that work?
No, it's me and the puppets. I at one point when I was in New York, I had a colleague who helped me out. She would do some of the puppetry work with me, but she got a real museum job, and she wasn't available anymore. So I thought if I want to continue this, I had to figure out how to do it as a solo act because that's the best way I can move quickly. So it's solo.
You prefer like the kind of the or control over your destiny as a solo puppeteer, or do you like collaborating with other puppet artists?
I would love to collaborate with other artists, and I will, I'm open to that. In fact, when I was in Chicago and still in training, I was part of a troupe that was put together by Gary Jones, a puppeteer in Chicago. So that was an entire troupe of like, I think at one point we were up to 15 members. So that was exciting. But you don't have the same flexibility when you're working that way. So there's some things that I miss about that. There are the things that I just kind of realize a solo actually can pick up and go.
What does your studio look like? I'm just trying to imagine.
Well, you're looking at my house right now. I'm in the living room.
I'm just curious, like, is it just like utter chaos, or is there like an impeccable order to it? What I mean, how does your creative process work?
A friend who walked into my studio space and she said, "Schroeder, is this controlled chaos?" So I have because my studio is in my basement, so I have a set of power tools, and some of them are out and some of them are in boxes, and then I have the materials, and then I have wood stacked up, and then paintbrushes. So yeah, it's organized chaos.
And when you're looking for inspiration, do you kind of say, "Hey, I'm going to go to the landfill today," or "I'm going to go, it's trash day, I'm going to go see what people leave out." Like, how do you like find objects besides people sending you keys, of course, but
I'm not below dumpster diving. If I see a dumpster and I see wood sticking out, I will put on gloves and climb into that dumpster and pull out the wood. I may be walking down the street and I'll see a rusted piece of metal. I thought, I'm not quite sure how I want to use this, but I like how it looks, so I just pick it up. So you have to be open to inspiration as it strikes. I also take a daily walk in nature. So I am fortunate, since I work at Morgan State University, I'm close to Lake Montebello. So I will walk around the lake. And I've enjoyed looking at how the flora changes seasonally. And also I look at the ducks and the geese and the seagulls who are on the lake. And I've gotten to a point where I can actually recognize the ducks by character, because they have these little funny characteristics, and you can point them out if you look at them really closely. So I'm just kind of open to all that kind of inspiration.
it's absolutely fabulous. Are there any other questions for our artists this morning?
No, but I too am struck by all your work, want to go follow you on Facebook, and am inspired by the range of work. And you must be a very hardworking artist. That's inspiring. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. This is Lenny. I have one last question. Maybe last. Have you found yet anyone who has been so influenced by your work that started doing similar work to yours? I'm asking that because that's kind of one of my hidden thing, trying to find artists all over the place that I go, oh, that looks like such and such. Oh, that looks like such and such. Then finding out that it's someone who's never actually met the other person, and just by just the law of odds is kind of influenced by similar things and delivering work that's somewhat similar.
Well, I think in the creative world, you kind of pick and choose, and we steal things from each other. Within the Hamilton Art Collective, there's some exchange and some sharing. You can see some influences between the artists there. And it might be a very simple thing, like, how did he connect that with a wire instead of a string? Like, I think I could try that too. So those little tidbits, we're open for sharing. So there is some change there. I can't say I ran into somebody who's like trying to emulate my style. I can't say that.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an absolute treat this morning, Schroeder. Dr.
Amazing.
Schroeder, I should say.
This is mine. Thank you, Jordan.
Oh, this is great. Thank you, everyone, for attending our talk this morning. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. We're supposed to have Elaine Wilson next week, presented by Matt Close, but I think I got email saying they need to reschedule. So I guess it'll be to be announced.
Yes.
But stay tuned. Mariana and I will kind of keep people posted on our next artists from the area. But it'll be amazing, just like Mr. Schroeder Cherry today. So thank you so much.
Happy
Applaud.
Juneteenth, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Happy Juneteenth.